feeding birds and shooting squirrels. Paul is on his morning rounds with a 410 and the latest thermal from Zeiss.
Good fun.
West Country Row. I'm off out with Ollie Williams on a frosty morning in Cornwall, asking ourselves, does that steam mean a deer in a ditch? Find out later. Red tape wraps up game. We investigate how new regulations will stop you selling your game to your local pub or butcher. We have news, we have hunting YouTube. Welcome to Fieldsports Britain. The flying may have stopped, but the feeding can't. We're joining Paul on his morning rounds. In a few days' time, the lockdown will lift and he'll be shooting pheasants again.
So is this part of your routine?
Yeah, every morning at the moment. Normally get up here just before light, have a cup of tea or something, and yeah, and then load up, do the feed round, a bit of dogging in on the backside, and then on for the day. Well, this month's been different because we basically had stalkers every day, so been doing a lot of this at night, which actually worked quite well because I'm trying to get the birds on this beat a lot wilder, not doing so much whistling, not so much like spinning and feeding with a bike. And it's worked. They're really, yeah, they're sharp, really sharp actually. Really pleased with them. But yeah, it's quite a nice, nice start to the day when it's like this. When it's raining, it's not so good.
Normally, at this point in the season, he would be feeding fewer birds, but thanks to COVID, there are still plenty around. It's an extra cost he has to, needs to bear.
On here, we've only had 2 days on this shoot, so 2 small days as well. So yeah, we're still on full ration basically. The other shoot, we've probably down sort of like a third. And also all the wild food's pretty much used up now, so all the acorns and the hedgerow food's used up, so they're pulling back in onto the feed rides and onto the feed areas anyways. And also we've still got a lot of ducks over here. We haven't shot any ducks at all. Ducks seriously trough the food.
It is not just a case of tipping out the feed and letting the birds get on with it. They are driven by food as well as lured by food. Overfeed them and they'll start heading for the hills.
Yeah, so basically chuck the food into the water and the ducks can eat it and the pheasants generally can't.
It takes about an hour and a half for Paul to feed this beat. It's a well-trodden route, but as he mentions, his new feeding regime has made the pheasants wilder, more flighty. He refills the hopper away from the cover crops so he doesn't scare them.
Come on, Mr. Squirrel, where are you?
As well as feeding, Paul's also equipped for pest control. He has his cute 410 side-by-side and a very new Zeiss DTI, the first thermal offering from the German optics company.
No go. Bit of action. This is an old folding action poacher's gun. Yes. And then the old poachers get out. Nobody around. Bang bang. Yeah.
Very cute.
Good fun.
To help us with our squirrel detection, Paul has the new Zeiss thermal on test. It costs about £2,600. He won't be taking it stalking, but he's finding lots of uses for it, including squirrel spotting.
Sneaky, aren't they? Outfoxed again. Outfoxed again by Mr. Squirrel. painful creature. Very clever though. What would be perfect for this would be sitting up somewhere, got an area where all the squirrels coming in feeding, whether it's hoppers or some chestnuts or beech mast or whatever it is, and just sit there with your air rifle or on the rifle on the floor when they come into a hopper, and just sit there and pick them off with a silencer, you know, take a few sandwiches, hot drink. I haven't got time for that. Okay. Well, there he is running across.
This squirrel makes a dash for it.
Tucked in there, really. He's rammed himself in there. He's dropped down, that's the problem. There we go. God, tight squeeze. Proud of them, David, proud of them. That's because they keep banging them against the trees when they jump across the trees, isn't it? I'm saying the youngsters, look. That tiny little youngster, late youngster. And you've got the old master buck. So yeah, done a bit, 5 squirrels, all good.
Gamekeeping is not one job, it's lots of jobs. And on a day like today, they are all pretty satisfying. For more information about the Zeiss DTI Thermal, go to zeiss.com. Thank you, Paul. And if all goes well, he and all the other hard-working gamekeepers across the country will get some days in this month. Now, we all know Mr. Childerley feels the cold, and in that film he was wearing the Shooter King Huntflex Primaloft winter jacket. To see Paul explaining why he doesn't do his rounds without it, the link is in the description below. Now from Primaloft to Prima Donna, and it's David on the Fieldsports channel News Stump.
This is Fieldsports Channel News. The Scottish Gamekeepers Association is planning protests before Scotland's 2021 election. In a response to the SNP government's attack on grouse moors, which it threatens to licence if it wins next year's elections, country people will campaign against the nationalist politicians who want to end their way of life. The SGA says it's received an unprecedented number of calls, messages and other communications since the SNP decided to move to an intermediate licensing of driven grouse moors. SGA Chairman Alex Hogg said rural communities would no longer be sacrificed because politicians want to right old wrongs that we had nothing to do with. The lockdown and a ban on game shooting may have been a blessing for game birds in more ways than one. A leading vet says deprived of shoot days, gamekeepers in the UK have spent more time with their pheasants and have been better at spotting diseases.
And certainly mycoplasma, we have seen a slight increase, although it's down on previous years. There has been a slight increase. Hopefully with the temperatures as they start to go back down towards the end of the year, mycoplasma tends to kind of hide itself away again.
The Prime Minister has been asked to give more people access to the countryside. About 100 celebrities, including Stephen Fry and Jarvis Cocker, have written to Boris Johnson asking him to extend the public's right to roam the countryside. The authors complain the public only has freedom to roam around 8% of the country. They want Johnson to extend rights to roam to woodlands, rivers and greenbelt land. At the last election, the Conservatives promised to criminalise some forms of trespass to restrict the movement of pesky sabs and antis. BBC presenter Chris Packham has been selling Christmas cards, with some of the proceeds going towards charity. He announced on Facebook at the weekend the charity would be Wild Justice, which is not a charity at all, but a lobby group. Saying money will go to charity when it is not violates advertising standards authority rules and could be considered fraud. After a couple of days, Packham corrected the mistake, which was pointed out in comments that he deleted. At the same time, shooting organisations have welcomed the release of court papers that suggest Wild Justice's judicial review on releasing game birds near designated sites would not have been successful if heard. Basque, Countryside Alliance, Game Farmers Association and the NGO worked together to ensure Wild Justice were unsuccessful in their request to have a stop notice placed on all game bird releases up to 5 kilometres from designated sites such as SPAs. The judge cast doubt on the validity of the case and criticised Wild Justice for trying to claim £35,000 in costs for the case it had instigated. The GWCT is slamming the RSPB for meddling with the Trust's data. The bird charity fails to point out that 2020 is England's most successful year for hen harrier fledglings in 2 decades, thanks to brood management and well-kept grouse moors. Results on RSPB land are miserable. Writing on the GWCT's blog, Director of Communications Andrew Gilruth accuses the bird charity of not standing by its neutral position on shooting, instead projecting its negativity to the public. He points to press releases regularly fed to the media with allegations of raptor persecution against gamekeepers. Gilruth says the RSPB uses the reports it generates itself to claim growing public concern that justified its review of game shooting. The fallout from the leaked hunt video webinar has meant that 3 major landowners have banned trail hunting on their grounds. Antis put out a story that a webinar held by hunting bodies to show how to dodge violent saboteurs was somehow proof that trail hunting is illegal. Unfortunately, instead of making the videos available, trail hunting's ruling body, the Hunting Office, ordered the Antis version of the videos taken down for copyright reasons. That gave the Antis enough proof to sell the story to TV News, and journalists didn't have to bother to watch the videos. They could just take the Antis' word for it. Now Forestry England, the National Trust and United Utilities have suspended trail hunting on their land. Metropolitan Police are refusing to give a gamekeeper's dog back after it was stolen and then recovered. John Gaunt spotted his Springer Spaniel Tilly in police photos after she was seized along with another 48 dogs in a raid on a traveller site in South London a month and a half ago. Officers said Tilly's chip was removed by the thieves, so now the dog's DNA is being compared with the sample John got from the breeder. He complains that nothing has happened since. He told The Times that he knows it's his dog from the markings. More dogs are going missing. Viewer Bob Crowther reports thieves broke into his kennels in Richmond, North Yorkshire, and stole both of his Springer Spaniel bitches, shown here. If you see them, please email bobcrowther3444@gmail.com. Meanwhile, experts are warning of a spike in abandoned pets after lockdown ends. A study found 2 million young Brits bought pets while they were stuck at home. One of the reasons pet prices have soared, leading to more thefts. The Pet Food Manufacturers Association says the surge is being driven by lonely millennials. Farmers may be in fear of the future, but shooters have given a cautious welcome to the government's new plans for the countryside. The end to food subsidies over the next few years scares the NFU, and farmers point out that the government has not said what it wants from land in England, only what it doesn't want. However, DEFRA's 7-year plan, called the Path to Sustainable Farming, could provide the kind of game habitat that will only be good news for game shooters and stalkers. Meanwhile, NFU projections see livestock farmers losing 60% to 80% of their income over the next 3 years. The Swedish government must vote no to the EU's lead shot ban. That's according to a Swedish parliamentary committee appointed by the government to approve new laws that come out of Europe. Last week, the European government pushed through a ban on lead shot over wetlands, leaving pro-shooting groups in Brussels and Strasbourg aghast. Shooters in Northern Europe, especially Scandinavia, point out that most rural land is wetland by the EU's definition. The European Parliament voted for the measure, allowing the European Commission to introduce the new regulations by the end of 2020. If the Commission meets this deadline, the UK may be forced to adopt the ban by the end of 2022, which will affect shooting over peatland. Authorities in parts of Pakistan are regulating hunting with falcons. Sindh province will charge falconry parties, mostly from Arab countries, $100,000 to hunt 100 houbara bustards over 10 days. Every winter, thousands of desert birds migrate from Central Asia to Sindh's warm deserts in the Sindh province. A new law means representatives from foreign countries need to apply for the permits. In 2015, the Supreme Court banned hunting the houbara bustard, but the ban was lifted the following year because it affected relations with Gulf countries. And finally, a celebrity stag on the Isle of Mull is accidentally in the Christmas spirit. Festive Bob has been walking around with Christmas lights in his antlers. He's been hanging around the local hospital for about a month, according to the Scotsman newspaper. After hospital staff finished decorating a Christmas tree for patients, Bob decided to headbutt it and got his antlers tangled in lighting. You are now up to date with Fieldsports Channel News. Stuck in the stories, fishing for facts.
Thank you, David. Thumbs up to you. And if you wouldn't mind, a thumbs up from you for us would be lovely. Last week we got the most ever, so thank you. We like them, and so does YouTube, which means more people will be offered the chance to watch more of our films. Next, Ollie Williams and I are putting in the miles, trying to get on top of his row numbers. Magical Cornwall on a beautiful frosty morning, and Ollie Williams is up early.
Probably the first cold morning of the year, I'd say, down here. We are looking for some does, 2nd, 3rd of November, I think it is. So good opportunity, first opportunity to get out on the rodo. They've cut the maize here quite recently, cut it quite late. So this will be the first time hitting this bit of ground, well, probably all year really, since the last doe season ended. So yeah, hopefully cull a couple. Everyone knows any good cull plan in the UK anyway has sort of 2/3 doe to buck, so hopefully we can get a couple, get them in the freezer in time for Christmas.
With that festive thought in mind, Ollie leads on around the family farm. There could be a doe around every corner, and he keeps an eye out for signs. Then he spots a sign he has never seen before.
So in the middle of the field over there's something basically just steaming. It's caught my eye. I mean, it's probably nothing. It's probably just condensation, but there's no condensation coming from anywhere else in the field. So, being a man of the scrum back in the day, when you see the steaming scrum, it suggests to me that there's either a big fat prop lying over there, or it's a deer.
No rugby moves here. Ollie knows this is a good spot for deer, and even has a high seat set up in a nearby tree. He creeps forward to see if he can catch whatever it is unawares. It's a good 50-yard stalk across the open field, so he knows he has to be ready to mount the rifle at any second. If whatever it is looks up, it could be gone in a flash. As it turns out, whatever it is won't be looking up.
Sewage pipe. Oh dear. Well, that's stalking, I suppose.
Apart from the opportunity for the famous English toilet humour, that wraps it up for our morning stalk. We head back out in the afternoon, and Ollie takes a wide arc around a different part of the farm. As the light starts to go, something draws him back to the sewage field. And he's in luck. A buck comes out of the wood with 2 does behind it. They make their way across the field. Ollie moves forward, risking them making him, but he wants a clear shot on both the does, so he reckons it's worth the risk.
By the rocks. Standing by the rocks. Yeah, got him. Yeah, I got him. That's down.
Both the does are down, and the buck hangs around until Ollie moves in to collect them.
Credit to the scope, actually. It was without it pulling in the light it was, I wouldn't have been able to identify them, but managed to identify the doe, saw the tush. Then she actually squatted to pee, if you like, and so that was pretty obvious what it was. And then so I shot her. The other 2 then stayed around because they were 2 kids, and obviously, here we're tree management area, so deer aren't really welcome. So trying to make the most of it. The buck was sort of running around, trying to identify the 2. Again, waited as the other doe squatted again to pee, and identified her, obviously the tush again, and took the shot. So a bit of action-packed sort of 5 minutes, but it was worth the wait in the end, and we got there, so job done.
Ollie feels 2 deer down vindicate his decision to return to the field of the steaming drain.
So after stalking around best part of probably 5-6 miles, we've done a whole full circle, and hey ho, my first suspicions were correct.
Ollie offers stalking as well as a range of other sport via his Cornish sporting agency. Visit the website on the screen. Thank you, Ollie. We got there in the end. Now, news editor Ben has been looking at a tightening of regulations that may stop you getting a few quid for that haunch of venison and 5 brace of pheasant you've dropped off at your local pub.
The Star Inn at Harome on the edge of the North York Moors. It's a pub built in the 1300s with 21st century cuisine. Chef Andrew Pern says it's just one of thousands of restaurants in Britain that celebrate locally produced food, some of which is game.
Glorious 12th, people like traditional roast grouse. So it is, you know, with the breadcrumbs, red currant jelly, the watercress, making a parfait out of the offal and things. So it's very much a sort of sense of tradition really with the grouse, to be honest. The attraction of selling local game meat is, it sort of goes with the area. The cuisine terroir, if you like, you know, the French have this famous sort of food of their region. Where we are here on the edge of the North Yorkshire moors, local estates all around us. I think the food that we cook, the local game, especially this time of year, autumn, winter time, we let the seasons write our menus. The game, obviously, you know, from grouse from up on the top of the moors here at Brandesdale, through to partridge, pheasant, local venison from the local estates. It's fantastic, and I think it's sort of that local community, that local sort of amateur stroke professional network of suppliers that we've got. You know, they're here, they come and knock on our door, we do a bit of bartering. You know, people love to see the game hanging by the kitchen door. It's very old English, and in a 14th century thatched pub like we have, I think it definitely fits the bill, and that's what people come for.
The menu may be a bit funky for this neck of the woods, but the emphasis is freshness.
I don't want to ring up a game dealer or a butcher from, you know, another county from down south and get something that arrives in a vac pack, you know, or it's been cling filmed to death. If it's in the feather, it can be hung for longer. We've got that period of when it's been shot, literally arriving here when it's still warm, and we can hang it, you know, or not, as our customers demand, really.
This could all be about to change. At the moment, the two suppliers of game to the end consumer are registered food businesses such as approved game handling establishments, or game dealers as we call them, and unregistered food businesses such as pubs and some butchers. The Food Standards Agency is mulling new rules that could see an end to centuries of tradition, where gamekeepers, landowners and shooters barter with bar owners unless they are approved. In the interests of traceability, the civil servants want it vac pack only from now on.
The clamping down of a thread in a shed, as we game dealers rather sniffily call them, that's going to be clamped down upon. I don't think that an awful lot of threads in sheds realise that what they're doing is frequently not actually permitted anyway. And I don't think that an awful lot of customers realise that they're putting their businesses slightly at risk by not actually doing the full due diligence on it.
A world away, or maybe about an hour or so from Andrew's restaurant, are the streets of Middlesbrough. John Kavanagh has been feeding street sleepers and people with problems there for 4 years.
We've gone onto the street where people are actually sleeping in doorways on an evening, cold evenings. They're sleeping behind the shops, behind wheelie bins with cockroaches and rats running around. And we go out there and we give them a warm meal. Over the past couple of years, we've gone over 1,000 hot meals to the homeless people. John prepares food for the homeless from his own kitchen. There's our mincing machine, sausage making machine, and what we've got there is some pheasant breast minced up with some cranberry, some orange and some cheese made into a sausage roll. Tasty, delicious. Once you've minced it, the world's your oyster. You can make many, many different things, like you say, your lasagnas, your bolognese, your sausage meat, your burger meat, anything that you'd put your minced lamb in, or your minced beef or your minced pork in. Change it with a minced game meat. The idea with the sausage rolls is that we can make them, and when we go and feed the homeless on the streets, it's something that they associate, it's something that they're happy to have. It hasn't come from our main sausage roll makers like Ginsters or Greggs, it's come from us, but they can associate it and they're quite happy to tuck in and try it. Based on a recent FSA consultation, could Andrew and John's work be affected by a proposed clampdown on who can give or sell game to whom?
The proposal is that the current wording around what a shoot can do with feathered game is going to be tightened up significantly. So at the moment, the wording refers to family and friends, which allows quite a lot of latitude in terms of how you interpret friends. which is what has facilitated game being passed into restaurants and what have you, and local pubs and that sort of thing. Off the top of my head, the language in the current proposal, still out for consultation, tightens that up to immediate household. If you want to do more than give birds in the feather, so you're actually going to start processing, then you will definitely need to, you will then trigger various bits of FSA regulation. Arguably, that's always been the case. It's just the language is being tightened up significantly to make sure the various loopholes get closed down.
For them to suddenly put restrictions on me and say that I have to have an added expense and I have to have an inspection, I have to have a certificate and I have to buy from a certain source, it would stop me from being able to do what I do. I wouldn't be able to go out and feed the people on the streets. We're very, very generously supported by the local estates. Most of the gamekeepers, if I said to them, is there any chance I could have, whether that be a rabbit, a hare, a deer, grouse, pheasant, partridge, wildfowl, they'd happily give me that to process it, knowing that somebody, the end user, is in need of the food.
My parents came here in 1969 when it was a very small village inn, and it's progressed into a 120-seater restaurant in the building we sat now, and then in the other end of the building, which was another restaurant, we're now converting into a coffee shop and a village store to sell local produce, game included, local game. You can buy it either in the feather or out the feather. We have our own little shoot, and there's 4 of us in it. And the game that we shoot, we share out, and everything's used. We give the beaters a free to take anything they want.
John and Ginger fear that big food businesses are not only dictating what people eat, they are over-influencing government policy.
When I went to school, I had to do home economics. And the home economics is a great science that we've taken away from the schools, because you weigh things, you measure things, you're creating a recipe using chemicals. We're using flours and salts and peppers and spices. We're putting all that together, and that gives us the common sense to put it in the oven. Is it cooked properly? And we bring it out. We've taken a lot of them things out of the school now, so we're taking away the common sense. So people expect to be able to get the meal, remove the cellophane, put it in for 20 minutes, and that's it. Nobody's actually preparing the food and adding their own bit of salt and their own bit of flavouring, the spices, and coming up with something that's unique and tasty.
You know, go and speak to your butcher and see what's nice, what's good, what's in season. You know, you could feed your family on a brace of pheasants for a few days.
I think maintaining that balance between the passion for eating locally, the wild harvest, sustainability, which is it's so key to the messaging around game, trying to keep that in place whilst accepting that we are, for better or for worse, a modern 21st century food producing sector, is going to be the challenge. I think we need to accept that we are a food producing sector and act accordingly, and unfortunately that is going to mean embracing some level of additional regulation along the way.
It would just take out the sort of the fun of the area and the sense of being, I think, for the local farmers, and that sort of tradition of the time of year, you know, the meeting of people. It's very much a sort of community thing as well, you know, the social side of the local shoot, and it's the coming together, you know, of generations and whatever, and I think that's very much the locality and where it should definitely stay.
The Food Standards Agency refused to confirm that food businesses are going to be dropped in the new year. They referred us to the latest consultation on the supply of wild game, brought in this year to help the UK comply with EU rules. And there's a link to that in the description below.
Thank you, Ben. Let us know if this will affect you. And don't forget, you can support our news features by joining the Fieldsports Nation. Go to fchannel/offer and join our happy band of 800 people who do just that, and find out what's in it for them. Next, it's Hunting YouTube. This is Hunting YouTube, which aims to show the best hunting and shooting videos that YouTube has to offer. In the UK, Robin Foxer is out after his #1 enemy at the Bowls Club and protecting a local shoot from those rusty rascals. In Norway, Torsen Rov Control puts out his first film in English. He is out flushing foxes to his gun with what's called a Norwegian Haldenhound. In South Africa, Air Hunters tries out the new FX Maverick, a combination of the FX Impact and the Wildcat, on doves shooting 26-grain javelins. Fieldsports Nation supporter Ryan Hollingsworth spots this news story in English on French national TV station France 24 about how they catch wood pigeons in nets in the Pyrenees. Here's how they shoot woodies in France. Flavien Chasse stands under a tree and the birds fly past, no decoys necessary. Next, we're off to the rugged Carpathian Mountains for some hunting moments. Sounds like a chocolate box. And just like said pralines, open it up for roe red and chamois flavoured delights. Brandon and Stacey Hunt are on a cold Canadian hunt for a bull moose. They are in woodland in Alberta and the shot is good. And finally, Ian Jensen calls this a brilliant film, How They Make Tweed in Scotland. Made by Pace Productions in 2017, it also shows the value of field sports to rural Scotland. Looking at you, Nicola. That's it for this week. I've put all these films into a playlist for you. Click on the eye symbol top right or check this film's description. If you have a YouTube film you would like us to pop into the weekly top 8, email me the link, charlie@fieldsportschannel.tv. Well, that is it for this week. If you haven't done so, please whiz over to our website, fieldsportschannel.tv. You can click like us there on Facebook and on Instagram. Follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, and best of all, pop your email address into our register page and we'll contact you about this show by email. It's Fieldsports Britain is out 7 PM UK time every Wednesday, and this has been Fieldsports Britain. Good hunting, good shooting, good fishing, and goodbye.